So good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are joining us. Thank you for taking time out of your day for the Salesforce Admins webinar, Salesforce on Salesforce, how our admin team led the lightning switch. My name is Mike Gerholt. I am the Director of Admin Evangelism at Salesforce. You can follow me on Twitter at Mike Gerholt. I'm joined today by two incredible speakers you'll get to hear from. One of them is Ryan Little. He is the Systems Specialist at Salesforce. And there is John Baptiste Minicelli, Senior Director, Product Management at Salesforce. You'll get to hear more from them. I'm so honored to be joined by all of them. Of course, it wouldn't be a Salesforce Admins webinar, or really any Salesforce presentation, without a forward-looking statement. So just a reminder that Salesforce is a publicly traded company, and please make all of your purchasing decisions based on currently available products and features. As Salesforce admins, we love to connect with you, and we hope you connect with us. So if you are on Twitter, you can follow us at Salesforce Admins, no I. And of course, you can connect with other awesome admins in our Salesforce community using the hashtag AwesomeAdmin. On Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, you can find our pages, Salesforce Admin. And of course, the page that I start my day with and you should start your day with, admin.salesforce.com, your homepage for blog posts, podcasts, and webinars just like this. And that reminds me, if you missed that amazing intro or any part of this webinar, it is being recorded. So you can go back, watch it again, share it with your friends. It'll be posted to our YouTube page, Salesforce Admins, and of course the webinar recap page, which is available at bit.ly/admin lightning switch. And I want to make sure to call out those capitalizations on admin, lightning, and switch. So you might have questions. I have questions. Easiest way to get those questions answered is to log into the Trailblazer community. Jump over to the Salesforce Admins webinar group. If you're not already logged in, fastest way there, bit.ly/admin webinar group. And of course, pay attention to those capitalizations on admin, webinar, and group. You don't have to wait to the very end to ask your question. Go ahead and post it in there. But do take a second to see what others have posted. That way we don't have duplicate questions. We try very hard to go back and answer every question. And of course, stick around for the end where we will have live Q&A with Ryan and JB to tackle some of those questions that are posted in the webinar group. All right, so let's get started with today's agenda. We're going to talk about Salesforce's move to Lightning, touch on tactics, to drive adoption, really highlight those adoption features, and of course, give you resources so that you can be a Lightning adoption champion moving forward. And the fun part of the webinar, which is moving to that live Q&A for Ryan and JB. So let's get started and talk about moving to Lightning. For Salesforce admins like myself, like you, we really have a nice adoption path. And whether you're in the discover, rollout, or optimize phase, I believe this webinar has a lot of features, a lot of information for you. I want to touch on this just for a brief second. So if you're in the discover phase, you're really learning about key features and benefits of Lightning. You're evaluating your business priorities, and you're understanding how to align business and IT strategies to get exec buy-in. I know a lot of you are there. I was there at one point. Everybody on the team was there at one point. And then from discover, you move to rollout, which is where you plan and launch. So you define your iterative rollout phases, address strategic business needs, and really execute your strategy. This is a large portion of your rollout. To me, it's the most fun. You get to see the change that you're implementing. And of course, like any good admin, you're always working to optimize your rollout. So looking at the features that you've rolled out to your users, gathering feedback from your users, from executives, measuring success, and making iterative changes, right? So we never just sit back and roll something out once. It's always take feedback, make it better, and of course, engage your users to drive adoption. So what I'd like to do is turn it over to Ryan Little to talk a little bit about the scope of the Salesforce implementation of Lightning adoption. Ryan?
All right, thanks, Mike. My name is Ryan Little. I've been an admin at Salesforce for almost 5 years now. Today I'm going to share the strategies that we used while migrating our users to Lightning experience. So we started our transition to Lightning in 2015. Lightning has come a long way since we started that implementation, and it won't take you anywhere near as long to make that switch. To set the stage here, here's a quick overview of what we were working with. So our internal org 62, has over 35,000 users, and we rely very heavily on sales, services, community, and analytics clouds. At a high level, we have 26 personas across sales, marketing, services, HR, and IT. It's 53 if we get a little more granular. It took us a little over a year from October 2015 to January 2017 to enable Lightning for all of our users. And as of the beginning of this year, we had 90% of our users exclusively using Lightning. And now I'm going to launch into the strategies that we use to get where we are today. So at a high level, our strategy can be broken into 3 phases. The first is communicating the benefits of Lightning and setting the expectations of our users. The second is some gentle reminders and sort of nudging to use Lightning and to take advantage of this period in our process to prepare for the rest of our migration. And then the last step is ultimately keeping users in Lightning. So first step here, communicating that it's better in Lightning. So basically, treat this like it's a marketing campaign. Our main communication strategy involved chatter posts and emails to the groups that we were targeting to migrate. We gave notice of all major changes, the benefits the users would receive by using Lightning. We told them when they would start being switched to daily with guidance on how to switch back to Classic. And then eventually, we got to letting them know when their access to Classic was going to be withdrawn entirely. We used a wide variety of methods beyond email and chatter, like we had Trailhead, e-learning modules, recorded trainings and demos, and we revised our user guides, facts, and all of our onboarding content. So in all of these communications, we did a lot of highlighting the Lightning-only features and to emphasize why they would want to make the switch. Which features we highlighted were dependent on which groups we were targeting. For example, our sales comms had a lot more emphasis on opportunity, account, and console, while our marketing comms put a lot of emphasis on campaigns. We also created some more generic communications, which were targeted at a broader audience that had wider appeal. And these focused on things like chatter updates, like emojis, rich text streams, post view count, as well as things like reporting updates and the console. All these features that we were highlighting attracted a lot of attention and helped draw people into Lightning just to see what it was all about. Additionally, we emphasized the productivity users could gain from things like Einstein features and Lightning pages that had been optimized for our various personas. And actually today, even though we're mostly done rolling Lightning out, we continue to do this type of communication with each major release and highlight any additional features that have been added that our user base will find valuable. Spring cleaning. So for us, this involved cleaning apps, deleting some, removing objects, cleaning page layouts like fields, custom links, related lists, and reviewing our Visualforce pages. To give an idea of what this looked like for our main opportunity page layout for sales, we decluttered it by 40%. Originally, it had 182 fields, 17 custom links, and 47 related lists, and we got that down to 113 fields, 4 custom links, and 26 related lists. So it was still pretty large, but that's just sort of what we work with. We did this after we put some users in Lex, and they didn't react well to how cluttered the layouts were, and reception was much better to Lightning overall after we'd done some tidying. This maintenance is, in general, a satisfying part of the admin work that we do, but we don't always have the time to prioritize it. And normally when we do these maintenance activities, it's not really appreciated or maybe even acknowledged by end users. But when we took this same work and we put it under the umbrella of rolling out Lightning, all of a sudden this became very noteworthy and it got a lot of business buy-in, and it drew a lot of recognition. So ultimately, communicating to set the expectations for the migration and highlighting the benefits of the Lightning features for our users and highlighting the efforts we as admins were putting in to make this a good experience for our users went a long way to get people comfortable with the switch. So next, remind users about Lightning. So we started with this sort of soft rollout with a daily switch to Lightning for users. Just about everyone in our company went through this process of automatically being put into Lightning overnight on a recurring basis. We made sure we sent out the communications ahead of time, letting people know it was coming. Otherwise, if they logged in the morning and everything looked completely different, we knew we'd have a headache on our hands. We also made sure we communicated how to switch back to Classic in those same communications. We didn't schedule a switch for all users at once, but did it over multiple iterations with different business groups. In the scheduled switcher that now exists as a standard feature, JB is going to be talking about shortly, but for us, nothing like this existed. So what we did is we created an empty permission set and a Jitterbit automation that switched users who had this permission set back to Lightning each night. So people may switch back to Classic, but it still gets them familiar with what the new interface looks like, and it gave them the opportunity to explore Lightning some, which they might not have done otherwise. Track adoption. So as of summer 18, this is the Lightning usage app is now part of Salesforce. It gives metrics on monthly and daily active usage, along with some other information that JB is going to get into shortly. When we did this, again, this is something that we didn't have access to when we rolled Lightning out. I personally was responsible for running a whole bunch of queries every day, breaking down who had user preference, Lightning experience preferred, set to true for all the different profiles and personas that were actively being migrated over to Lightning. The Lightning usage app is a much more elegant solution to what I did when trying to track that information. Collect feedback. So for us at Salesforce, it was really, really important to let people feel like they had, and still today have, an outlet for their concerns, feedback, and questions. We had working sessions for some groups, but for the majority of our users, we used a chatter group for this purpose. One of the most popular and widely used chatter groups in our org is called Lightning Experience for Org 62. It's monitored by both IT and the business, and it's sort of become this catch-all for issues, suggestions, requests, and best practices for Lightning. It's sort of our one-stop shop for all things Lightning Experience. We've used it to prioritize updates, and it provides our communications team with a central spot to send out messaging about major changes and feature releases. And then having this outlet for their feedback and seeing quick turnarounds for the issues that they're experiencing has been really invaluable for our efforts of getting people to accept Lightning. Implementing something like this while users still had the ability to switch back to Classic let us get ahead of many major blockers later on that we would have encountered. So next, keep users in Lightning. So removing the switcher. We did this using a combination of permission sets and profiles. We have a permission set called Make Lightning the Only Experience, and it contains the perm hide option to switch to Salesforce Classic. For me as an admin, removing the switcher was definitely the most satisfying approach that we took. It flushed out where the gaps actually existed and required users to switch back to Classic versus people just not wanting to learn something new and switching back to Classic as a result of that. In many cases, switching back to Classic just came down to an unfamiliarity with Lightning, but by the end of a day without the option to switch back to Classic, people were already used to the new interface. We did this in sort of two approaches. There was high touch and low touch. So our high touch approach was for our more customer-facing personas, and they received the priority here. They had an in-depth personalized change plan. We actively tracked their gaps, and we optimized their layouts ahead of time. This was mainly done for account executives, services, and marketing. We collected willing teams to be our guinea pigs and provided them with training and support. For these groups, we used a permission set. So after doing our initial optimization for these groups, we tracked down leaders within our company who were committed to the change and who were highly visible within our company. And they volunteered their teams to test out being locked in Lightning with no ability to switch back to Classic. The first session I was a part of was in San Francisco, and after the success of that one, I helped out with the second one in Chicago. What this basically looked like was sales operations partnered with us and business stakeholders to analyze the daily routine of our sales users. Based on this assessment, they provided training sessions in the morning for these groups that walked the users step by step through what their daily routine would look like in Lightning. While these sessions were in progress, I was hanging out in the back of the room, and I removed the switcher for all of these users with perm sets. And when they were done with their training and logged into our org, they'd all been switched over to Lightning. They didn't have access to Classic anymore, and then they went about their day. So for the rest of that day and the following day, we had resources roaming the floor to answer their questions, make note of any blockers they encountered, and as well as a couple admins on site to make any necessary quick fixes. After this, we didn't restore their access to Classic. We actually kept them in Lightning in order to keep fleshing out any gaps that might exist that we didn't get in those 2 days. And then over the course of these sessions, we noted why users switched. We identified blockers versus what was just an inconvenience versus what was just user ignorance. And we built a project plan from this list of issues that we got over those days. After the session and correcting their major pain points, that's when we rolled Lightning out to their broader group and locked down their profiles or master site permission sets, depending on the team and persona. So our low-touch approach then, actually back a slide, there we go. Low-touch, so for this approach, we removed the switcher first, and then we made adjustments later. This was done for users with low impact on transactional processes, and where the risk of moving them was low with minimal impact assessment on our part. So we communicated with standard communications that were designed for a broad audience. This was sort of chatter users, read-only users, those types of people who fell into this category. This was satisfying because it boosted our Lightning adoption in a very short period of time. There was minimal griping at first, but it subsided quickly. Leading into this phase with the communications and the soft rollout, and then ending with removing the switcher, gave users the time to air their concerns and gave us time to remove any glaring obstacles with their help before removing the option to switch back to Classic. For some users, this last step of removing the switcher was necessary to get them to adopt Lightning and adapt to the new interface. So then our lessons learned from moving to Lightning. First, Lightning is great, but it's definitely a change. At this point, we primarily receive positive feedback about Lightning. There are features that are only available in Lightning, which is a good reason for people to make the switch just for that. And it definitely takes some getting used to, but the consensus has been that it's worth it. Lightning Console, this helped a lot of our users who were having issues working out of multiple tabs. The ability to leave at the end of the day and retain the workspaces they'd been working out of swayed a lot of our users to operate in Lightning before we'd remove the switcher. One size fits all doesn't always work. So there are many options in Lightning that allow for personalization of workspaces, Lightning pages, component filters, personalized tabs, etc. After rolling out Lightning, we took the time to review user feedback and see where we could make tweaks so we could personalize the experience for our users. Executive support, this one speaks for itself. Without the buy-in from leadership, we would not have been able to achieve the adoption that we've seen. Pilots, so even when we partnered with our various departments' operations teams to update Lightning for their constituents, there were still things that we'd all overlooked. Getting user feedback from pilots was absolutely necessary to close those gaps. Taking away Salesforce Classic, so just because a user is being switched to Lightning daily doesn't necessarily mean they're going to use it. Removing access to Classic was a sure way to get the input we'd been requesting from our users. And lastly here, build a SWAT team. So we built a team that consisted of people from operations, a project manager, the communications team, and a bunch of admins that met daily to review any feedback that we'd received and to give updates on the progress that had been made in closing any gaps that had been reported earlier. This kept us accountable to a timeline and made sure we were prioritizing the right customizations. So a lot of what we had to do manually when we were making the switch over to Lightning now exists as part of the product, and JB is now going to speak to some of these features.
Awesome, thank you. So that's a great Salesforce and Salesforce story, and it probably resonated for most of you guys because that's the stories that I've been hearing with the thousands of conversations I had with our customers. And we decided to bring you those change management capabilities in the product because what Ryan mentioned is most of the time it's actually people reacting to a change. Of course, you have those gaps and those configuration that you need to work on, but most of the things is change management. So we're gonna look at the features we are providing to you with the same triangle, which is communicate, remind, and keep. And for the first part, communication, we are doing the same things that Ryan did. So communicating the value of Salesforce, of Lightning, through in-app messaging. So we call that internally, it's better in Lightning, and that's features that are prompted directly in Classic based on specific pages where your users are actually working on. So it's available for calendar, task, dashboard, and reports. If users have access to the Lightning interface and they are still working in Classic, they will be prompted with those models. Only if they have been using those features for a while, and if they click on I want to learn more, they will be redirected to the Lightning experience with a small training video and snippet on how that feature is actually better in Lightning and how to use it in Lightning. So again, really selling the value of those features to your users is really the first step there. Those controls, if you go to the next slide, you will see that you can actually configure that in a page in setup. It's called onboarding and assistance for Lightning experience. You can decide which features you want to outline to customers. They're all on by default, but if you want to remove some that are not relevant for your users, you can do so in that page. The next one is the reminder. So we all know that change is hard. When we have an update on our phone or our computers, we sometimes don't like it, and that's the same with Salesforce. So the Lightning interface sometimes is a big change for some of our users, and what we decided to implement is called the schedule switcher. So same thing that Ryan did with Org62 is pushing users on a daily basis. So now it's part of the product, and you can use that feature to push your users daily or weekly to Lightning experience as a gentle reminder. Right, so you can start small, doing weekly, and as you approach, cutoff date that you might have defined in your project plan, then you can switch to weekly just to remind users, they should be using Lightning. If they have feedback, they can provide feedback to the trader group and other systems that you guys put in place following Ryan best practices, and go from there. So a great way to remind people to move to Lightning. And as Ryan mentioned, it's good people to let know that they have been switched and give them a little training, a reminder on Lightning. And we provide that through a welcome mat that is displayed to those users when they have been flipped to Lightning through the schedule switcher. So we have a set of content that are provided by default, and they can call that models through the help and training menu. That feature is on by default. You can configure, you can turn it off if you want completely for your org, or you can actually turn it off just for specific profiles. If you want to do a phase rollout and you have different waves of users in those 3 stages that we just described, the communicate and basically block access to Classic, you can do that through a permission set. Last but not least, that's the most drastic, and at some point you will need to cut access to Classic because you don't want to support 2 interfaces. You're gonna switch off Classic by removing the switcher. So it has been in the product for a while. I just want to remind you that it's there. A great way actually to force people to use to Lightning. So you just have one interface, and people are gonna be benefiting of all the new features and productivity tools that Lightning offers. Okay, so roadmap. So we're gonna discuss a few things that are coming in the product that are gonna help actually to drive adoption as well. So Ryan mentioned a lot of feedback mechanism, feedback loop, getting for two reasons. First is hearing your customers what they are saying. It's usually a van for them to complain about new things because change management is hard again, and also getting feedback on some specific configuration that you might want to address now and or later. We are going to have in a product a user feedback mechanism that when people switch back to Classic, you will be able to ask a question. So that question will be automatically saved and published in a chatter group that's going to be dedicated to that feedback mechanism. So it's going live in the next few weeks. Be on the lookout in the release notes. That's going to be a great way to get feedback from people switching back to Classic, so you can address those issues sooner than later. Number two is a welcome mat for new users. I showed you a welcome mat that is displayed to users when they are flipped to Lightning through a schedule switcher. We're going to expand the welcome mat to any new Lightning users. So if you have a new users connecting to Lightning for the very first time, they're going to see that welcome mat. And the best of all is you will be able to configure the content if you don't like the default content that Salesforce provide. So our default content is how to navigate and the key features in Lightning. You will be able to provide very step-by-step instructions to specific users if you want to by providing your own page within the welcome mat. So great way to onboard your users and reduce churn to Classic if you have a high churn. Last but not least, I showed you how to disable Classic and remove the switcher by profile. We're gonna actually have a default or a master switch to disable Classic for all users at the same time. So it's gonna be much easier. When you know you're done with Classic and you're just on Lightning, you will go in the Migration Assistant, and we're gonna be adding a master switch to cut the Lightning access in just one simple click. So no more perm sets. That's gonna be great and easy to turn Classic off.
Thanks, JB. Ryan, I will cover some resources that we have available and in the time left, hopefully get some questions. So we have the Get Lightning Usage app, which you can use to track adoption, usage of Lightning experience, so you can monitor progress and make informed decisions. This is great because you can report on daily active Lightning users, the number of users that switch to Salesforce Classic a day, and the most visited pages in Lightning. Oh, that's super cool. Imagine, JB, you helped build that. Additional resources, admin's Lightning page. So admin.salesforce.com, which I told you is the page I visit every single morning, / Lightning. Of course, we have admin blog posts on how Salesforce launched Lightning in 7 steps. I believe I helped with that. bit.ly/Lightning admin guide. Of course, it wouldn't be giving you a webinar without some Trailhead badges. So I love the Lightning Rollout badge and the Lightning Experience Basics. And if you're ready to tackle a super badge, Lightning Rollout Specialist. So just wrapping up, looks like a lot of great questions are coming into the admin webinar group. bit.ly/admin webinar group. At the end of this webinar, there will be a survey that'll pop up. Please complete that. And of course, slides will be available, bit.ly/admin lightning switch. And of course, pay attention to those capitalizations. Ryan, before we go, we do have time for one question. I was wondering, was there a specific feature in Lightning that really helped drive adoption for users?
So for us at Salesforce, both console and all of the stuff that's been added to Chatter have been the 2 biggest driving factors for us.
Love it. I definitely will second the Chatter. I use Chatter in Lightning way more than I use Chatter in Classic. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. Be sure to continue posting your questions. JB and Ryan are going to jump into that group, complete the survey, and we will get those slides sent out to you.